And that's why I'm an original co-sponsor of the articles of impeachment against Secretary Noem. Bad behavior begins at the top. If we want to ensure all individuals are treated with dignity, we have to ensure that there is competent leadership in place, and I have zero faith in Secretary Noem. Let me be clear. Using ICE agents to kill people in the streets is fascism, and I will use all the tools.
This may look like a heated exchange in a congressional hearing, but it's actually a stress test of democratic oversight. What's really being tested here is whether federal enforcement power remains bound by law or drifts beyond it when leadership fails. This raises broader questions about accountability in the executive branch and the limits of delegated authority. In this video, we'll break down how oversight findings escalate into constitutional remedies, why leadership standards matter more than rhetoric, and what this moment reveals about the balance between security and civil governance.
Thank you, Representative Min. I now recognize Representative Emily Randall from my home state of Washington.
Thank you, Representative Dreyfus. Across the country, we all watched from our phones as ICE murdered Renee Nicole Good in the streets of Minneapolis last week. The American people are fearful and angry. They're terrified. They're furious that the Trump administration is unleashing lawless agents on our neighborhoods, raiding an active forest firefighting operation in my district, and shooting people dead who dare to speak up and protest and ask questions. I refuse to let state violence committed by state police, not Minnesota State Police, but state police, go unchecked. Accountability is not optional. In my first year as a member of Congress, I successfully conducted 5 oversight visits to the Tacoma Northwest Detention Center in my district. Once, I was illegally denied entry. During these oversight visits, I heard directly from detainees, some of them legal permanent residents, many who had been in the U.S. for over a decade, that they're being denied proper medical care, that ICE and GEO agents regularly accompany detainees during medical appointments, exposing them to incredibly vulnerable moments in violation of their rights under HIPAA and counter to common practices of community doctors who, like Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, who visited with me once, see criminally incarcerated patients. This is part of a widespread problem that raises serious privacy concerns, serious training concerns, serious oversight concerns. We all saw in a viral video earlier this week an ICE agent following a detained individual into a porta potty. There is no situation that warrants this. This is in line with ICE training, or I should say a lack of training, that is empowering lawless agents across the country. And to make matters even worse, we all are hearing from tribal members, including those in my district, as well as Native people across Minnesota and across the country, that ICE is illegally detaining and targeting Native people for the color of their skin. Tribal members are being detained as leverage to convince tribal nations to sign agreements with ICE for enforcement on their sovereign territory. And that's why I'm an original co-sponsor of the articles of impeachment against Secretary Noem. Bad behavior begins at the top. If we want to ensure all individuals are treated with dignity, we have to ensure that there is competent leadership in place, and I have zero faith in Secretary Noem. Let me be clear. Using ICE agents to kill people in the streets is fascism, and I will use all the tools available to fight to defend our democracy and our collective future. New NBS reporting shows that ICE used AI in determining which agents needed how much more training. And in instances where individuals wrote about how badly they wanted to be an ICE officer, they got less training. Chief McCarthy, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the training your police force employs. I'm sure it's better than what we're seeing ICE be given. Are local officers typically trained to record interactions with their cell phones while holding a gun at the same time in the other hand?
Thank you for that question, and no, ma'am, they are not.
Are local officers typically trained to fire their guns into vehicles?
We are trained if we need to fire a weapon into a vehicle. However, most policy, including the state-wide model policy, warns against shooting into moving vehicles.
Yeah. There's probably some de-escalation in between saying please stop and shooting into a vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
And speaking of de-escalation, are local police officers trained to de-escalate situations, or are they trained to shoot first?
We are trained to de-escalate situations.
So police officers for the city of Minneapolis, who are given more training than the federal agents, are keeping our communities safe. And I want to thank you for everything that you do to keep our communities safe. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The moment that lingered in the chamber today was not just a question or even an accusation. It was the sound of applause fading into a silence heavy with consequence as Representative Emily Randall laid out why she chose to co-sponsor articles of impeachment against Secretary Noem. In that moment, the hearing stopped being procedural. It became moral. A line was drawn, not just between parties or ideologies, but between two visions of what power in America is supposed to mean. Randall's words were sharp, deliberate, and deeply personal. She spoke not as an observer, but as a witness to what she described as unchecked federal force operating in communities, far from the abstract language of policy memos and press briefings. She described oversight visits. She described barriers placed in front of elected officials. She described people held for long periods, people who had built lives here, raising alarms about medical neglect, about dignity stripped away in moments of extreme vulnerability. And she made one thing unmistakably clear. In her view, this was not a series of isolated mistakes. It was a pattern. And patterns point upward. What unfolded in that exchange revealed something larger than one department or one secretary. It exposed the tension at the heart of modern governance. How much power the state can wield in the name of enforcement, and how little transparency may exist when that power is exercised far from public view. Oversight, Randall argued, was not a courtesy. It was a duty. And when that duty is obstructed, when questions are met with locked doors or silence, trust collapses. Her remarks about training cut even deeper. Training is where values become muscle memory. It is where restraint, judgment, and proportionality are either reinforced or ignored. When she referenced reports suggesting that advanced algorithms were used to determine who received more preparation and who received less, the implication was chilling. Decisions about authority and readiness, she suggested, were being shaped by systems that rewarded enthusiasm over discipline, eagerness over judgment. In any system that grants the power to detain or use force, that imbalance matters. The contrast she drew with local law enforcement was telling. When she asked whether city officers are trained to document encounters while simultaneously aiming a weapon, the answer was no. When she pressed on escalation versus restraint, the response emphasized caution, policy, and deliberate steps designed to slow situations down, not accelerate them. The subtext was unmistakable. Those closest to the community often receive more comprehensive preparation than agents operating under federal command. This raises uncomfortable questions about accountability in Washington. When actions on the ground spark national outrage, who answers for them? Is it the individual agent, the supervisor, the department, or the leadership at the very top? Randall's answer was unequivocal. Responsibility, she argued, flows upward. Culture is set from above. Tolerance for misconduct, or indifference to it, begins in executive offices long before it appears on a city street. Her decision to support impeachment was framed not as a partisan maneuver, but as a constitutional remedy. Impeachment, in her telling, is not revenge. It is a mechanism designed precisely for moments when trust between the public and those entrusted with authority breaks down. It is what the system turns to when ordinary oversight fails, when hearings and letters and reports no longer produce change. Beyond the specifics of this case, the exchange spoke to a deeper anxiety coursing through the country. Many Americans feel that institutions once designed to protect them now operate beyond their reach. They see force applied unevenly, explanations offered too late or not at all, and accountability diluted by layers of bureaucracy. When elected representatives echo those concerns inside the halls of Congress, it signals that the disconnect has reached a critical point. This hearing was not about slogans. It was about systems, about how decisions made in offices far from public scrutiny ripple outward into real lives, about whether leadership demands not only authority, but humility and restraint, about whether democracy can function when those charged with enforcing the law appear insulated from meaningful review. In the end, what Randall presented was a warning. When accountability is treated as optional, legitimacy erodes. When oversight is resisted, suspicion grows. And when leadership fails to confront misconduct within its ranks, the damage spreads far beyond any single incident. It seeps into the public's faith in government itself. Moments like this are why hearings matter. Not because they always produce immediate consequences, but because they place actions on the record. They force choices into the light. They remind those in power that authority is borrowed, not owned, and that it can be withdrawn when abused. As the room moved on to the next speaker, the weight of her words remained. The question now is not just whether impeachment will advance, but whether the broader system will respond to the alarm being sounded. Will leadership reflect, reform, and restore trust? Or will it retreat behind procedure and delay? History shows that democracies are tested not only by external threats, but by how they police themselves, by whether they can confront uncomfortable truths without flinching, by whether they can place principle above position. This is one of those tests. If you believe accountability matters, if you believe power must answer to the people, if you believe democracy survives only when truth is confronted, not concealed, then stay engaged. Support our work to expose the truth. And subscribe to Liberty Report USA.